Somebody asked me the other day if my speaking voice was real. Well, it's not really. Like a lot of people in radio, I've developed a voice that's not really my own, but I talk like this all the time. I'm from southern Indiana, though, and everyone back there has kind of an odd, interesting southern Indiana accent, best exemplified by a gentleman who was kind of my second father as I was growing up, Bernard Wise. Bun Wise, we called him. He and his wife, Helen, lived right next door to us all the time I lived on John Street in Washington, Indiana. After he retired, I figured it was about time to put him on American Montage, for he had been with the B&O Railroad for over 50 years. And the B&O used to run right through my hometown with 4 passenger trains a day, each direction, going between St. Louis and Washington, D.C. Listen in the final minutes of this week's show to my interview with my old next-door neighbor, a man I loved very much, Bun Wise. I asked him what my old hometown was like, the railroad yard in particular, during the busy days of the Second World War.
The trains were so thick that they switched them here. Put the cars in line up in the train, so when they got to St. Louis, they could just take them off in bunches, and give them to different railroads the same way going east. Of course, at that time, we had a lot of bad ones. They'd put everything they had in to run them. He'd take, maybe they had a lot of stored tank cars or something. He'd drag them up and fill them with oil and send them out on the road. When the time they got here, all kinds of troubles. And we'd have to set them out with hot boxes and brake beam down, bad wheels.
So in other words, during the war, there was such a shortage of everything, they were scraping the bucket, literally, when it came to rolling stock.
Oh, yeah. It sure was.
Now, did you have a lot of troop trains come through here, that kind of thing?
Yeah. We have a lot of them. They'd have coaches on them, and they'd have their equipment on flat cars behind them.
For example, how many parallel tracks were there down there? And did sometimes the guys on the troop trains, would they get stopped here for hours or days because traffic was so heavy?
Tracks was all full. The yardmaster told me, he said, now, we're holding all trains out. We got them stopped. Sidetrack somewhere. There was an oil train. Northern oil trains, they wanted them moving. They needed that to go. Said, now, holding everything out, that oil train will go down the main line. And when we get it out here, well, then we can go to moving something out, back out on the main line and get them started west again.
So in the true sense of the word, they said, clear the tracks.
So I stood down there and waited, and the yardmaster was standing there talking to me. I looked up, and I seen a headlight coming from the east. And I said, I thought you told me that all trains was held out. Oh, yeah, he said, they are. I said, one of them ain't. He laughed. I said, well, you better look east because I see a train coming right down the main line from the east. He looked up and he like to pass out. So he went to the operator and got a hold of the dispatcher. And sure enough, they'd forgot to tell the local train, hold it out. Somebody had flubbed. Well, that oil train had to stop for something. And they call it cut the crossing. He'd separate the train so the cars and stuff get through the crossings while they're waiting, and then he'd couple up, he'd go ahead. Well, they said, we happened to stop the oil train in Fritson. He left Vince there without the caboose and 10 cars. They didn't couple the crossing. And so the yard engine then had to bring that out of Vince and bring the caboose and the rest of his train out and couple them up, and he'd come on through there.
There's a story around this area about a place called Blue Hole, which is kind of legendary because there was an accident there. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, that's right down here west of town, right below Oak Grove Cemetery there. It ain't probably a couple of miles from the railroad shop down to Blue Hole. It's when the river got up, washed out there,
Took the tracks, right?
It's under the bridge, or in the ground floor, they had to put a bridge over them. Because water, every time we got up, it run through there real swift. And it dug that hole out of it, pretty deep hole.
Big enough to drop a train engine in.
Oh, yeah. And, I don't know how long the bridge was, but it's a pretty good long bridge across that washout, you see. And the river in 1913, when it got up, brush and stuff come down the river and through the backwaters and got against this bridge, the river bridge. Well, they was over sandbagging between Blue Hole Bridge and the main river, Prairie Creek Bridge down in there, you know. And they come back and when they started across the Blue Hole, they gave way. The engine went in. Took the engine, that's all we got in, the engine. It's a tank car, coal car that carried the fuel for it. And the car that was right behind it was loaded with men, and it didn't go in.
Were there fatalities?
Oh, yeah. Seemed like there was 3 or 4. I was just a kid, 1913. The superintendent of the railroad, Stevens, Dan Tucker was yardmaster, I believe. The eastbound trains were even numbers. Westbound was odd numbers. We had 61 and 62 were locals. They started from here and went to Cincinnati and back. And then they had number 1 and 2. That was National Limited. And they had number 3 and 4. 29 and 30. 11 and 12. And they had, 55 and 56, I believe it was. They were followed number 1, number 2. They was, because number 1 of them couldn't take care of all the business, so these were extras.
So there were at least 4, you might say 4.5 trains a day each direction.
Oh, my.
Just passenger.
Yeah. You get some pretty close calls. I could think quite a few that I got. Lord help me out of.
You mean there were a couple times you came pretty close to getting it?
Oh, lots of times. I jumped on. I'd worked a train over in the yard and had a box over there needed looking after, and I got a work and oiled it up. I was waiting for number 4 to go through. And I thought, well, I'll take my war can back over to our shack. And I was across the main line where the train went. I went over there and I didn't hear nothing. There was trains on every track. I climbed over that last train over there and I jumped off of it. And when I jumped out into the way of that other track, here was that number 4 coming around the bend. And he shut off and he wasn't made my track. And when I hit the ground, I seen him and I just kept running. I don't know how close he got to him, but boy, they run through there about 50 miles an hour, 60.
That'll put the fear of God into you when you look up and see a train coming at you.
Yeah, I went right on down over the bank past our building. I was running so hard I couldn't get stopped.
You know, now and then you'll see that the kids will be out playing on a trestle or something. That always scares me to death, particularly if it's on a curve. I have never gotten that close to a speeding train, but I guess they can come up pretty quickly.
Oh, my. Yeah, you can get killed on trestles pretty easily.
So you were with the railroad for how long?
47 years.
That was most, if not all, of your career.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to be back there again?
I would if I was able. But there's nothing there down here anymore. The steam engines, you'd have to start a big train. I mean, you'd have to back up as far as you could. That is, they had what they call a draft gear, a big spring between each car, you know. And and they back shove them cars all together. And then when you take off, we each spring it, giving some little bit of slack, and each car would start the car behind it.
So in other words, really, when you're starting out, you're only pulling one car, and then two, and then three, and then that way.
Yeah.
In other words, a steam engine could not pull the entire train at once from a dead stop.
No, but the diesel do.
So a steam engine always backed up a little bit.
Yeah, even on passenger trains.
Were there any trains that were express that didn't have to stop here, or because this was the dispatch point and the way the railroads were designed, did almost everything stop here?
Everything. Change engineers here.
Because when Dwight Eisenhower died and the funeral train went back to Abilene, I think it only stopped one or two places from Washington, D.C. to where he was buried, and one of them was right here.
Yeah.
Ironically, I remember as a kid, the people who lived across the street, the Esther family, Mr. Esther somehow, I don't know whether he worked for the B&O or not, but he knew what trains were coming through. And occasionally, Mrs. Eisenhower, the First Lady, would come through here visiting her mother in Colorado, and I don't think she liked to fly. Mamie didn't like to fly. And Mrs. Esther baked cakes. And now and then, and I must have been 5 or 6 years old, we would go down and take a cake to Mamie at the train, and it was so bittersweet years later, just out of college, to also go down there to the funeral train and realize that Mrs. Eisenhower was on the train, and that years ago as a child I had gone down and seen her for a very different reason. But I'm sure you had some high-class celebrities come through here.
Oh, well, yeah. This was the best route from St. Louis, from the west to the east. New York and Washington City to gateway through St. Louis West, you know.
Hollywood stars going west. Did you know sometimes when there was someone famous, or did they leak that out sometimes?
Didn't tell you about that.
Kept it a good secret.
Yeah.
Well, Bun, listen, I really appreciate your reminiscing, and we could probably talk for about 10 hours, but there are a lot of guys like you around with some wonderful memories of a time that was very different than it is today.
Ain't very many of them left.
Well, thank goodness you're here.
All of them is there when I started practically going. They were many left, you know.
But Bun Wise survives with wonderful memories of an era long gone. The railroad on this week's American Montage.
No, the railroad doesn't stop here anymore, and it's all freight. The time when passenger trains, 4 a day each direction, would stop in Indiana, those days are long gone.